What a difference a week makes. Last week, we ended our service in partnership with many other congregations around the city, singing "We Shall Not Be Moved," hoping that we wouldn't have to do that soon. Again. We were in sorrow and anger, knee-deep in grief about the non-indictment in Ferguson. And then just while we were warming up to care about some place we'd never heard of near St. Louis, we had to care about a repeat and related incident on Staten Island. All the time, all week, we were getting on and off subways, buying groceries, cooking meals, listening to the radios, getting our nails done, or thinking maybe we ought to try that. And then a grand jury, much too close for comfort, was deliberating all that time. Almost like the way the A train runs all night. It just keeps going, but you're only interested in the one you want to catch. We knew that they were deliberating, and sort of knew that they would issue a something sometime soon. And it did issue a decision. Just as a plane load of religious leaders from New York City was landing in Ferguson. I tried to get on the trip, but it was closed at 30 by the time I registered. Serene Jones, president of Union Theological Seminary, many other luminaries, and my son, Isaac Luria, they were on that plane. Another 30, we might say, of New York City's finest, meaning religiously, were on that plane. And they heard about what had happened here, literally as they were being asked by the leadership in Ferguson, who have been at it for 117 days and are tired and worn. That leadership said to our leadership, "Why did you give up on the civil rights movement? Why did you give up?" And now everything is new. And the question that the Ferguson people asked the New York people is rumbling, rumbling, rumbling underground, like the A train. Deeply rumbling within that question is whether we did give up. Did we give up? And why does it take sacrificial death over and over and over again to get those of us who want to pay attention to pay attention? And what kind of attention shall we pay? Big flashes of attention, booming closing songs, or small, steady attention? And what if the answer, my tired friends, my beloved, bruised and tired and fatigued friends who did not give up, what if we have to do both? And where will we find the energy? How do we flash the pan and staff the flash? And how are we going to do that and keep up with our emails? It's all new this week. We have lost our defense mechanisms. We have become unnumb, which is one of the scariest places in the world to live. Oh, that numb, that comfortable neighborhood of numb. Numb really is a place. You can live there a long time. You can live there quite comfortably, except for all those expensive antacid pills. But then something happens, and there's an occasional breakthrough story like what's happening right now. Even though you knew it was happening, now you have to know it's happening. I really appreciated Bill Altham's comment to me last week. I don't think he's here. Somebody tell him. He fussed with me about my concern that Officer Brown had not been indicted. Why, asked Bill, why scapegoat just one policeman? What good will that do? That'll just help people put it back in the box quicker, the numb box. We know there are hundreds of them who don't know how to behave. If you scapegoat one or two, then they get punished and the system goes back to itself. That was a good comment. Thank you, Bill. It's a good point. This week we have been forced to realize what we know, and that is that the police are not policed. Some of them, not all of them, use excessive force, which is illegal. We also live in a society of perdurant racism. Those of us who are white get treated differently than those who are not. My historian friends tell me that this already, right now, is the largest national conversation on race that we've had since the Kerner Commission. And I think they're right. How many of you know what the Kerner Commission is? That's what I figured. About half of us. The Kerner Commission upset the world in 1968. It was a sop to keep people off the streets. It was because people had gotten so upset about what was going on that they said, oh, let's have a high-level commission. They did. They issued a report. It became a bestseller. Everybody read it. And the conclusion was that we are rapidly heading towards two societies, one black and one white. And it was true. My historian friends go on to say, quote, this is the return of 19th century New York, because then the people owned the streets and the swells had to go inside. They even had to build thick walls to make sure that they didn't get shot over their roast beef. That's why all the private clubs in New York City have much larger than usual thick walls. And that's also why there was an armory built in many cities around the country to house the domestic armies they used to keep racial and economic peace. There is nothing new about Eric Garner. Instead, there is a rumble, something happening underneath the ground, and we know it's there, and sometimes we try to forget. But again, this week we are mercifully and mercilessly forced to see what is going on. Not only is history repeating itself in the difficult terms of armories and the Kerner Commission and the old civil rights movement, history is also repeating itself in uprisings, important uprisings, uprisings of the human spirit from the ground below, people just walking out of their front doors on East 18th Street, between 2nd and 3rd Avenue, on the Brooklyn Bridge, at the Apple Store, in Bryant Park, in Washington Square Park, in Union Square, people walking out of their front doors in Berkeley and Chicago and Miami and Philadelphia and DC and more. I'm in a restaurant on Friday night. I was in Florida this week, in Naples, Florida, and a woman is on her iPhone saying, they closed Route 95 north of Miami. How am I going to get to the airport? How am I going to pick my brother up? Why is the road closed? It's a 6-lane highway. Also, historically, let us note, this is the first time we have marched in New York City without being penned up since 9/11. This is not small. Nor is it small that we elected a mayor who is running a different police department than his predecessor. This is not small either. We have to flash the pan and staff the flash. I know it is terribly hard to trust systems right now, at precisely the point we need to make sure that the subways run with great vigor. Please don't give up on voting yet. So back to what the Ferguson people asked the New York people. Why did you give up on the civil rights movement? Because we got beat. Because we got tired. Because we thought a little was enough, and it's not. because power had a stronger infrastructure, and they just lasted us out. It's very important to become confessional right now. It's very important not to say, but we didn't give up. We did. It's very important not to say, I'm not a racist, but I tried. I did my best. Why not just say, some of us did give up? And some of us worked on the tunnels and the turns and training the personnel to operate the subways. Why not just say, yes? We gave up. We gave in. We couldn't sustain the momentum. We knew there was no such thing as a natural teacher. You know that line? I love this line. A natural teacher doesn't need training, doesn't need college, just stands up and teaches, right? Like a cop. You know, some people are just born to be good cops. They don't need training. They don't need education. Or a preacher. You just learn how to preach by, something happens. Well, that's not true. We are all in a constant process of education, every single one of us. And confession is the beginning of education. I don't know how to do this, says the teacher. I don't know how to do this, says the minister. I don't know how to do this, says the cop. 26 years old. You remember what it was like to be 26 years old? I do. I didn't know how to think. I may not still, but I sure didn't know then. So today, let's think and know we're going to get this confession right the first, the second, or the third time. We are confessionals in training, like CITs, camp counselors in training. One of you got very upset with me a couple weeks ago, and I think you were right. I preached about wanting to do more with the new sanctuary movement, and she felt rightly, I believe, that I hadn't thanked us enough for what we had done. We've not been thanked or thanked each other enough for what we have done in terms of stop and frisk and ICE out of Rikers and stopping solitary, et cetera, but we have done what we could, and it's not enough. Oddly, this all turns into a bit of a liturgy, confession, the word in the middle, and then praise at the end. So I want to go to the question that Micah and Michael and I were wondering, do we have to stop every service from now on by rising and singing and crying? We shall not be moved. Or can we do it a little differently? We're going to sing it during the agape meal, because that's how this is going to end. It's going to end where it began. Comfort, comfort ye my people, cry to Jerusalem, her warfare has ended. Speak kindly and tenderly to her. In the end, God will be in charge. In the end, the battle will be over, the victory will be won, not because we earned it. My friend Jim Forbes loves to say that the black church thinks it needs God and the white church thinks God needs them. Let's get over that. We've paid our dues. We haven't won anything yet. Crying to Jerusalem that her warfare is ended, already ended in Ferguson, Staten Island, Burma, Chechnya, the Philippines, Greenwich Village, and your apartment. It's also ended for Wilson and Brown and Garner and Pantaleo. This is no time to go small on the wealth of our theology. It is time to go deeply into the meaning of nonviolence and there to cry to Jerusalem, her warfare is over. Amen.